Well, you've done it. You've went through all the videos in the cosmology series. Or perhaps you haven't. Perhaps this is your first one. Regardless, I give you praise for getting to this point within Destiny's cosmology, and no doubt you've come for an explanation on the higher source material. Well, there's a lot. And I'm going to be honest, you're going to be sitting through half an hour of me talking about the Nine, the Witness, miscellaneous stuff, and eventually the Winnower. If you're turned off by that notion, it's okay to leave now. If not, I just have one more thing to say to you. This cosmology series was some of the most fun I've ever came up with in my life. And because you guys gave me a lot of support on these previous videos, I wanted to give you guys a reward to end this series off on a high note before the end. I'm going to leave that in. Before the beginning of Edge of Fate on Tuesday. So without further ado, allow me to end this series on a fucking bang. The Nine, a race we know simultaneously very little, yet we know a lot about. The problem is, though, their storytelling is just so stingy. We barely have anything on them in the game. Very little on them exists. We have some Nine lore from an old PvP event called Trials of the Nine, and then if you grab bounties, you would get very odd dialogue in the form of text, but all the letters are always spaced apart and they're in caps, so you have to read the text and figure out what they're saying. Then a dungeon called Prophecy released, and we still know nothing about the Nine. It's just they see light and dark as the same. Of course they would. They're not from this dimension. They're desperate. If the planets disappear, so do they. That's why they want light and dark. Here's the gist of it. The Nine want to escape from their fate. They're almighty, very powerful, unstoppable forces of nature. Yet they're gentle, fragile, weak. If a planet were to explode, their planet, that Nine would die. Not from battle, not from injury, but because his essence is tied with the planet that blew up. It's a very harrowing weakness of theirs. And so the Nine debated upon age, upon age, upon age, and finally, they splintered. One faction of the Nine, called the Five, they wished to escape their fate by obtaining the light. The other faction of Nine, called the Four, they wished to escape their fate using darkness. And so, they send multiple people into the universe, vessels of theirs, and they use these vessels in order to learn about the denizens of that universe. They try to learn about the Guardians. They try to learn about Ahamkara. They try to learn about the Awoken. They try to learn about everything imaginable. With Guardians in particular, having the nice, shiny golden ticket in front of them in the form of Zur. He comes by every weekend and then disappears every Tuesday until he comes back the following Friday. You go to him and you buy exotic wares. Wares that are randomized every weekend. The Nine use Zur. They use the carrot on the stick of the glittering prizes that you can earn. The amount of power you could have in your hands by holding that weapon. That is what Zur is for. They use Zur because they want to learn about Guardian kind. They presume to know the Guardian's desires based on watching their behaviors in the universe, so they adapt. Once Zur wasn't enough, they then send a second. Orin. Orin was to tell the Nine about what she saw in us, while simultaneously they sent Orin to learn more about us to tell back to them. Orin is a vessel of theirs. In return for having such incredible and legendary power, she became a vessel of the Nine, no longer herself. And so, the Nine view us as worthy. That's kind of it. They view us worth acknowledging, worth looking at, worth keeping in mind and consideration. A long time ago, they didn't really care about guardians. They cared more about the light that they carried. But nowadays, we carry light and dark. We carry such bizarre power. Power that the Nine would benefit from far more than we would. And so they send a third envoy. Their name is Starhorse. And then here's where the whole Paraverse thing comes from. The Paraverse is all the Bungie games inside of it. Starhorse can draw from any part of the Paraverse so that he can run the game show called Dares of Eternity. Dares of Eternity is framed as a game show, but in reality, it's just another way for the Nine to look at the contestants and see what they can glean about them. That's not even the terrifying part. No, the scary part is, the Nine are from a dimension that's far beyond the scope of Destiny's cosmology. And Destiny's cosmology already contains the Bungie multiverse inside of it. How powerful do you think the Nine would be if they are beyond the scope of what is effectively their own creator's multiverse? Granted, they're below the Witness, who you should be more terrified by, but the Nine in their own right are very dangerous because they've been left unchecked for well over 11 years at this point. The fact that they've had the time to prepare and cultivate their plans, only to finally initiate them now? Whew! I would be terrified to see their strategies in the upcoming DLCs in the next 3 or 4 years, which is the Fate Saga. The Nine should terrify you more than you think. They might not be the Witness, but if you ignore the Nine, that will be the last mistake you will have ever made. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the last 11 years of Nine lore. Very little. Enough said. I would offer more, but I've already dropped quite a huge nuclear bomb in this segment, so I'm going to go ahead and continue with Grace.
The universe makes us all victim and perpetrator. Life's infinite cruelty. You, more than any, suffer both fates. Be free.
The Pale Heart. At this time, the Pale Heart is the newest addition to Destiny's overall cosmology, and a mainstay at that. It's not explained verbatim what the Pale Heart is, just a description of the realm. But if you want the simple answer, it's this. The Traveler has a conscience. It has morals, values, uncertainties, fears, so on and so forth. The Pale Heart is this realm that acts as the brain of the Traveler. When you go inside the Pale Heart, that is the core of the Traveler itself. Its own realm, its own mind, its own conscience, shaped by form, by those in there who are influential to reshape it. The Pale Heart is, and likely will remain, the most important part of Destiny's cosmology in the last couple years. Only a being such as the Witness could hope to reach the Traveler's power, seal it in place, force the opening of a portal into it, to go into a realm that is completely beyond the bounds of the entire cosmology. It was only by using Ribbon's wish to create a set of ley lines that would allow us to tangibly traverse the journey to the world of the Traveler, and even then, we had help from the Traveler in order to get in there. It was only by battling with our own evils and helping our allies battling their evils. It was only by taking the torture of the Witness, enduring harsh trials along the way, that we were able to finally reach the Witness and do battle. And 3 times we beat it, all with help from the Traveler and those who want to be freed from the Witness. It was only with the entire solar system uniting, everyone and everything, every faction, every single person you could think of attended the final battle. The Witness is the most incredible being in all of Destiny in terms of power. Beyond all logical systems, beyond all beings. Someone so powerful that they alone maintain the power vacuum in both direct and indirect means. It was only with the passing of the Witness that the entire cosmology went back into disarray. Many factions, many people struggled to obtain enough power necessary to fulfill the gap left by the Witness. It was only through the creation of the Echoes that such people were able to obtain their dreams, obtain power they have. However, not even the newly obtained power that they grasp in their hands at this time could reach the true power of the Witness. It was only a being of the Witness's power level who could truly threaten the Traveler in all of Destiny. No other person compares. No thing, no power, no feat, no statement, nothing. The entire scope of the Witness was the only being successfully in Destiny to conquer the Traveler, to subjugate the Traveler, and to use it as a vessel for its own wishes. No other being was able to make the Traveler bend to its knee in such a degree, and even then, the Traveler still fought back. The Traveler is easily the most incredible being inside the entire mythos alongside the Witness, with the ability to propagate chaos by creating life, sowing the seed of life in many worlds. The Traveler giving its gift to many, all in hopes of achieving what it truly wanted, a champion, all to battle against its fated enemy, the Witness. And thus, here we are 11 years later in the story of Destiny. It is worth keeping in mind, however, the Traveler and the Witness at their peak will be the most powerful characters in the entire mythos for such a long time. Perhaps even the rest of our days. It's unknown how and why someone would surpass the Witness, nor would the means be obtainable at this point. I would be very surprised if it didn't take at least 3 to 4 years from now for someone to surpass the Witness. Any longer than that, and I would not be surprised. The Pale Heart, in my opinion, is one of the most interesting parts of Destiny. It illustrates the last 10-11 years of storytelling that we have seen, experienced, and had good and bad times with. I enjoyed my entire playthrough of the final shape on all 3 characters, and I'm pretty sure I'm also going to enjoy the entire story of Edge of Fate when it arrives too. My last note is this, however. If the Pale Heart is beyond the entire cosmos, including the 9, how powerful do you truly think the Traveler is?
His act. The Calus you face is no almighty emperor, but something far more dangerous. A hungry, desperate beast. Once the Cabal Empire and all its bounty was his to command, and his to consume. Joy was his purpose, and his strength, he said. To angst over edicts and enemies was weakness. But I could see in his eyes dread that his pleasures would soon come to an end, clouding his sight from an incoming coup. I should have killed him then, but I thought exile more fitting. I thought he'd shrivel to nothing in the void of space. Instead, he caught a glimpse of something more. The chance to become greater than he'd ever been. Like a war beast after a blood scent, he chased that chance, abandoning all honor, reason. There was nothing he would not sacrifice for his own salvation. And when the witness came to him at last, Calus faced what he had run from all along. If we don't stop him, he'll make sure it's the end for us all.
The section that I didn't have a name for, so I'm calling it the Miscellaneous tab. The Miscellaneous tab includes things I am not fully certain about or I've not covered in the video prior, so this is my second chance at covering them before I forget. First things first, what about the 3 disciples? Rolk is verbatim the strongest character before the events of the Final Shape DLC. Rolk is above everyone physically except for the Witness. Nezarec, assuming he's at full power and he has people praying to him, would be relative to Rolk in power, but would have better hacks. Calus is just straight up worse than the 2. The thing to keep in mind with the disciples, even Calus, is all 3 of them scale above the Hive Gods. So, no matter where you debate about the disciples, they are all for sure above all the Hive Gods. Plain and simple. Next on the docket, God Gaul. God Gaul happened because Guardian Gaul was defeated by the main character, then he awakened into what he called a god. We have 2 names for Gaul. There is Guardian Gaul, when he has guardian powers, and then there is Light Gaul, or God Gaul, where he becomes that super giant Phoenix Cabal thing. It was actually literally impossible to put Gaul somewhere until Rult came out, and here's why. Gaul was the most dubious character to put somewhere on a tier list compared to the rest of the cast. All we knew was a nerfed Traveler that just woke up, one-shotted Gaul. However, there's nothing to say that the Traveler couldn't do the same to the Disciples either. The only thing I can say about Gaul is this. Either you say he's on the weaker end of the Hive Gods, or you put him above the Hive Gods but below the Disciples. He's in a very awkward spot. All we know was he lost to the Traveler, and even while the Traveler is nerfed, it would still beat just about anyone else in Gaul's position at the time. Therefore, the only conclusion I can give for Gaul is, put him wherever you think he is. Maybe he's weaker than the Mindbender. Maybe you have him above Panoptes. Maybe you have him above Zol. Maybe you have him above Oryx. Maybe you have him above Calus. What is for sure, however, is he is below Rolk. If you want my honest opinion on where I would put him, realistically, I would put him above the Scorn Barons, possibly around full power Crota. I think it's the safest place to put him. Put him around Oryx if you wish. Just try not to get hit by an onslaught of Hive God fans, and come back to me on how that works. The last note I wanted to bring up is Warmind Rasputin, as well as structures that power scale somewhere. Warmind Rasputin is veritable. His potency level completely depends on the technology that he has access to, along with the space station and other technology. If you put Rasputin at his peak, he is around the Traveler, at the Traveler's peak, before Final Shape or Lightfall. There isn't a whole lot I could say about Rasputin, since a lot of his showings are off-screen, while a lot of his intelligence feats are on-screen, and they're in lore. We have a whole lot of consistent stuff for him, but his place is more veritable in the cosmos, and there's some debatability to where you can put Rasputin amongst the cast. Next, let's talk about the structures. I'm talking about the pyramid ships, them going in the portal so they become the monolith and the pale heart. Seraph Station, the space station we went on to for the Vespers Host dungeon. The Morning Star space station. Rolk's Vault, the Upended, and a whole lot of other stuff that I've not brought up by name. The whole goal of those structures is just to further reinforce the size of the cosmology and make it look bigger. The structures themselves don't inherently add anything on their own. They just further add to the point of, hey, this guy is really tough. If this structure can't hold him, he must be really scary. Or, this guy can just blow up a throne world for no freaking reason and tank the energy output of the thing that can do that. That's all the structures are for. They don't inherently add anything on their own. I'm sure there is stuff I'm forgetting to mention, like maybe some notes about the sundial, but even then, something like the sundial would fall back into the same problem. While there is a lot to discuss with the various structures in Destiny, and perhaps worth their own video in the future if I get a request, they're not as important to this video, since I'm also trying to keep this under 2 hours. Another obvious problem I see would be Fikrul. Fikrul created the Revenant plane. The only problem is, the only statement we have regarding the Revenant plane is just a comparison made by Nezarec. He says the Revenant plane is this tumor on reality. It is a perfect reflection of the universe. We don't know if it's just a throne world, or if it's a literal exact copy of the physical universe in its entirety. The problem with this is that causes confusion on where you put Fickrel. I think Fickrel versus Savathun is somewhat debatable. The problem I see is throwing Fickrel up against Xivu or Wrath or current Oryx. I don't think he's going to survive, because both have ways of getting around his physiology, which is something the main character had a really hard time struggling with. While I could see Savathun beating Fickrel if she had prep, I mostly see the other two Hive Gods beating her more often than not. The last note of semi-importance would be the Sea of Stars in the old crews. There's not much I can say about them, other than the main character cannot one-shot the pirate lords, and they cannot one-shot the ship captains. All of which are terrified of Aramis the ship stealer. The main character would physically be around Aramis the ship stealer.
All is not yet lost. The Witness may have won this battle, but it is wounded. And while you've been occupied here, within the Traveler's heart, I've brought our allies to help you land the final blow. The full might of Keitel's empire stands behind us in this endeavor. Mizrax Kel rallies his House of Light to save their great machine. And I have found a guardian of great renown, Micah 10, who comes to us with bold ideas. If you intend to subdue the Witness, we must first fight its corruption and weaken its hold on the Traveler. You will grow in strength, in power, and when the reckoning is at last upon us, you will storm the Witness's monolith and strike where it is most vulnerable. You will shatter its hold on the Traveler, and you will end it.
And here we are. The last cosmological section in this video. What could I possibly discuss that would be of so much significance to me that I feel it outweighs the rest of what I talked about in the video by and far? I'll put it to you this way. Me and you are not the only two people who play Destiny. In fact, there are two other people who are playing it as we speak, that view even us as insignificant pests, insects, not even worthy of their time. These two have warred on their philosophy regarding the video game Destiny since their inception, which there wasn't even an inception, they just existed because. They are the ones that topple cause and effect. They're the ones more fundamental than the circular reasonings we employ all the time when we defend something we believe. These two beings are so important to the franchise that they are the reason we even have Destiny the game. Allow me to demonstrate the two strongest characters in Destiny, the Gardener and the Winnower, the creators of Destiny. If you recall me discussing the flower game earlier, good. Let me bring up the flower game again. Destiny the video game is the flower game. The flower game has been played beyond an inconceivably infinite amount of times by now, all of which ending with the same conclusion. Even despite the fact that the entire cosmos is remade to be more powerful than the cosmos before it, the result always is the same. The final shape wins out. The champions of darkness claim their title as the strongest and the only one in the universe. And then it is all ended, and then restarted and played again. Eventually, the Gardener got tired of the Winnower's games. They got tired of how boring the flower games always were, time and time again, with the repeated repetition of the same thing happening over and over and over and over and over. Eventually, they got into a fight. From their battle, all of time and space itself was born. Nothing was the same after that. The Gardener and the Winnower directly involved themselves in the flower game that they played. The entire cosmos was remade, more powerful than it ever was before. The Gardener and the Winnower fought with so much ferocity that an entire cosmos was born of their collective energies. This has never happened before. The entire cosmos was born from their battle. The cosmos we have today is stronger than any version of the cosmos you could conceivably think of from the start of creation up to now. Part of the reason why Destiny 2 the video game works the way it does is because this is the iteration of the flower game where things changed. But is only because the Winnower believes the Guardians are fulfilling the law of the sword logic that the Winnower decides that he can take a step back from now and let everything play out the way they would on their own. The Winnower doesn't have to do anything. In battling against the Witness, the Guardians fulfill the prophecy of the final shape, that they themselves bring on a change to reality so significant that it was never the same again. That in repelling one final shape, they brought about another. And thus, the Winnower does not have to do anything. He can just sit back and watch the entire cosmos that him and the Gardener created in their battle play out the way it would without their involvement. And so, while missing a bunch of details to get here so we can do this under 2 hours, that is mostly the cosmology. Now, I am more than sure by now, seeing how I was working on this video for multiple days, that I missed a lot of details going into this. And you know what? That's fine. I covered most of the important stuff. I covered the changes to the cosmology, I covered the individual sections and what I thought about the races that mattered to that part of the cosmos, and overall, I think I did my job here. There's plenty more to be made content about, or rather, I'll restate that. There's plenty of stuff I could still make content on. However, I think it is here that I will leave you for today, my dear viewers. Thank you for giving me your time, attention, and a chance to prove to you, even the newcomers who've not watched me before, that Destiny is far more important cosmologically than you thought before. That a mere universe you conceived of is in reality something much greater than you ever thought it could be. And thus, that is the goal of today's video. If you like this video, please help me out by liking, sharing, subscribing. Show this on Power Scaling Wiki, Reddit, Comic Vine, TikTok, Space Battle forums, character stats, you name it, every platform imaginable. I want you to share this on there because I want other people to know that Destiny has a really significant cosmology and it is not at all for the faint of heart to go over. And because I made this video today, I just want everyone else to know, at least on a certain level, what us Destiny fans are looking at when we talk about Destiny's Cosmos. Now, that's all I have for you today. I don't think I have anything else on the docket to bring up that would make this erroneously longer than it should be, so I'll leave it here. My name is Nothing Important here. Please like, share, and subscribe. A share would very much help out. Likes are amazing too. Anything you can do to contribute to my channel's growth is extremely helpful. Now, I will see you later, and I'm going to get some sleep. Peace.